Introduction. When you took the job that you have now, did you hope it would make you happy? Did you anticipate having a connection with your coworkers? How about the work itself? Did you imagine yours would be an occupation that would complement your life outside of work and mesh in a way that felt unique and rewarding? If so, perhaps you've been surprised or even disappointed. While some people are fortunate enough to love what they do for a living, the majority of people with jobs face challenges on a regular basis that undermine their ability to be happy at work. Hannah is a 32-year-old secretary at a consulting firm where competition, subterfuge, and resentment prevail. She describes the office as a place where the loudest, most underhanded person wins. Peter is a 35-year-old social worker who enjoys helping people get healthy, but feels increasingly burned out by the extent of his workload. He's having a difficult time separating himself from the pain of the people he's helping, and is suffering from an escalating sense of helplessness and hopelessness. Louise is a 40-year-old police officer who doesn't know how to separate herself from the aggression her job stirs up inside her. To get through her adrenaline-charged days, she tries to compartmentalize the anger and fear that come with the job, but then finds herself taking it out on her husband and children when she goes home. Grappling with issues of work and happiness brings up many important questions. Is it possible, or even wise, to try to be happy at jobs we don't like? Can we really maintain our peace of mind in hectic environments filled with uncertainty? Can we find a skillful way to deal with times when we've tried hard to make a difference, yet feel ineffectual or exhausted? Might the quality of our leadership expand through restoring our own deeper happiness? The answer to all of the above is yes. There are pragmatic tools at our disposal for becoming more productive, satisfied, and peaceful at work. I believe the foremost among those tools is the practice of meditation. For nearly 40 years, I've taught techniques of concentration, mindfulness, and compassion meditations to thousands of people around the world. They have included groups of creative entrepreneurs, school teachers, police officers, artists, scientists, army chaplains and medics, doctors, nurses, firefighters, frontline workers in domestic violence shelters, as well as financial executives. People using meditation for greater happiness come from every walk of life, ethnic background, and belief tradition. Through meditation, we can come to understand work problems as a potential source of achieving greater clarity, rather than as obstacles without redeeming value, and begin to recognize the true potential of the challenges that work brings our way. Although many people experience work as a burden or worse, it is also a place where we can learn and grow and come to be much happier. In the words of teacher and former executive Michael Carroll, maybe problems arise at work not as interruptions or intrusions, but as invitations to gain real wisdom. Adults who work full-time spend more of their waking hours at work than anywhere else. And Americans spend more hours per year at work than citizens of any other nation in the world. It can be difficult to keep from confusing our core sense of ourselves with the role we play at work, but clarity about this is critical to our peace of mind. How we approach work that's not always fascinating and manage our time and emotions to counterbalance stress and cope with disappointments is intrinsic to finding meaning in our work world. We discover that it is possible to be competitive without being cruel, and committed without being consumed. Even in a job climate where being fired is a real and present danger, we have the power to improve our work lives immeasurably through awareness, compassion, patience, and ingenuity. As I listen to people's stories, students, friends, and researchers on the subject of work, a few common unhappiness themes began to emerge. Burnout and the need for greater resilience, time management and excessive hours or demands, questionable moral practices or challenges to personal integrity, feelings of losing a sense of purpose, and the need for deeper, more durable meaning. Condescension by superiors who do not listen and show a lack of compassion in decision-making. Boredom, distraction, and ineffectual multitasking due to a lack of concentration. The longing for creativity, surprise, variety, and a more open awareness, fostering flexibility and change. And finally, the desire to understand their work environment from a more open perspective. These observations are about what is missing for so many, but they help clarify what is needed. They led me to consider the ideas that would begin to resolve those issues, and I identified what I think of as the 8 pillars. Each chapter in this audio program is named for one of these pillars and concludes with a series of meditations and exercises to try. The meditations are a pragmatic guide to a range of options. It is worth experimenting with them to see what you want to continue with. Even if you are listening to a later chapter, you might wish to go back to earlier meditations to re-experience them on a deeper level. By the time you reach the end of the audio program, you will have an array of tools for cultivating greater stability, openness, and fulfillment while working. The formal meditations will require 10 to 20 minutes of your time. You might find it easiest to choose 1 or 2 and practice at home each day. The 5 core meditations found in the early chapters are mindfulness of the breath, identifying emotions, the body and walking, letting go of thoughts, and practicing loving kindness. Together, these form a complete curriculum for establishing a meditation practice. The other suggested meditations build upon the foundation of these 5. Please feel free to experiment with them all and see what you find most helpful or intriguing or challenging in a way that sparks your interest. Once you feel confident with the meditations, you can incorporate them into your workday in the form of brief mini-meditations, as well as practicing them at home. The exercises, done either through reflecting or journaling, harness our creative thinking to refine the lessons learned through meditating and help us apply them to our work life. The stealth meditations found throughout the program specifically shape our ability to bring mindfulness, concentration, and compassion to our work. As you explore and develop these 8 pillars, may they serve to support you in your quest to establish a deep and abiding experience of real happiness at work. The 8 pillars of happiness in the workplace. Balance. The ability to differentiate between who you are and what your job is. Concentration. Being able to focus without being swayed by distraction. Compassion. Being aware of and sympathetic to the humanity of ourselves and others. Resilience. The ability to recover from defeat, frustration, or failure. Communication and connection. Understanding that everything we do and say can further connection or take away from it. Integrity. Bringing your deepest ethical values to the workplace. Meaning. Infusing the work you do with relevance for your own personal goals. Open awareness. The ability to see the big picture and not be held back by self-imposed limitations. Chapter 1. Balance. We live in a complicated world. The new normal of this overextended era requires us to juggle a growing number of demands. The massive influx of everyday content, as digital agers call information, makes mindfulness a growing challenge, particularly in hectic job environments. As we ping-pong back and forth between phone and computer, obligations and deadlines, we might well find ourselves longing for a modicum of balance to help us find equilibrium amid these multiplying distractions. Balance is the first pillar of happiness in the workplace, because without it, it's hard to do a good job or enjoy our work. Without some breathing space in the face of constant demands, we won't be creative, competent, or cheerful. We won't get along well with others, take criticism without imploding, or control the level of our daily stress. Just as a solid building needs a foundation both level and strong, mindful balance provides the essential foundation we need if we want to weather the stresses of work and find a way to flourish. The stress factor. According to several studies and surveys, a large majority of Americans consider work to be a significant source of stress in their lives, with more than half of those questioned indicating that they feel undervalued by their managers or colleagues and are planning to look for a new job in the coming year. According to a survey released in 2013 by the John Templeton Foundation, Americans are less likely to feel or express gratitude at work than any place else in their lives. Long work hours, lack of control over responsibilities, organizational constraints, interpersonal and task conflicts, role ambiguity, and fear of being fired, along with chronic nervousness over the prospect of not getting hired elsewhere, are among the most common stressors that make people unhappy. David Rock, author of Your Brain at Work, has described in fascinating detail the intricate mechanics of the brain on creativity and stress. We know, for example, that self-described happy people have more new ideas. We know that stress decreases our cognitive resources, whereas mindfulness induces what is called a toward state in the brain, an openness to possibilities. In this condition, we feel curious, open-minded, and interested in what we are doing. All excellent qualities for thriving on the job. Neuroscience tells us that creativity and engagement are essential to making people happier. But the technological onslaught of today's world can also become highly stressful. Long hours, hard work, and high pressure are exacerbated by our being permanently plugged in. Though the introduction of laptop computers, high-speed internet, mobile technology, and social media have wonderful advantages in how we connect, they also reinforce behaviors that shut down the toward state and set us on autopilot. One of my students, Sonia, recently gave up the freelance writer life she loved and took a job in a hectic office. With fewer magazines and newspapers hiring during the economic meltdown, she was forced to replace her quiet, self-reliant lifestyle with one in which she's overwhelmed on a daily basis by demanding colleagues and what she calls a fretful vibe. Sometimes when I'm in a meeting or working on a deadline, it occurs to me that I'm barely breathing, Sonia admits. I'm surrounded by dozens of fast-talking, fast-moving, breathless people. My days are scheduled with meetings, brainstorming sessions, and conference calls. It's a little like panting all the time. This is a common scenario. For many people, their working life becomes a kind of nemesis rather than a place where they feel happy and valued. The simple act of stepping over the occupational threshold into the office, classroom, precinct, restaurant, hospital, shopping mall, factory, or wherever work begins, is to enter an environment filled with potential distress and uncertainty. Anxious about losing her job, Sonia feels as if she's losing herself in the process of making a living, and has no choice but to tolerate the consequences of her toxic environment. Fortunately, meditation has the power to reverse the negative physical and emotional effects of stress. The act of training our attention so that we can be more aware of our inner thoughts, as well as what's going on around us in the present moment, primes our brain cells to fire together in patterns that strengthen the vital nervous system structures that are key in everyday tasks such as decision-making, memory, and emotional flexibility, and nurtures qualities considered to be crucial components of happiness: resilience, equanimity, calm, and a sense of compassionate connection to others. Stealth meditation. Before beginning a new project or meeting or conversation, ask yourself, what do I most want to see happen from this? Emotions, and happiness in particular, should be thought of in the same way as a motor skill, says neuroscientist Dr. Richard Davidson. a pioneering researcher in the relationship between meditation and happiness. Our emotions can be trained. Unfortunately, we don't take this revolutionary idea as seriously as we should. Davidson explains that when stress overwhelms us, prompting us to become upset or do things we might later regret, it's a sign that our amygdala, the brain's trigger for the fight or flight response, has hijacked its executive centers in the prefrontal cortex. Our amygdala functions like an executive assistant, or a speed dial circuit, keeping an up-to-date record of anything that appears to be a threat to us. This primitive part of the brain makes us react in the same way every time the situation comes up, which means that we can sometimes behave in ways that are less than professional. That is why the neural key to resilience lies in how quickly we can recover from that state, according to Davidson. It is also why business schools have begun teaching mindfulness techniques to aspiring MBAs, and why mindfulness training has come to be recognized as an integral management skill by a growing number of mainstream corporations. Mindfulness refines or clarifies our attention so that we can connect more fully and directly with whatever is happening. So many times our perception of what is happening is distorted by bias, habits, fears, or wishful thinking. Mindfulness helps us see through these, even if they do arise, and be much more clearly aware of what is actually going on. I often use this example. Imagine you are on your way to a party when you run into a friend who reports on his earlier meeting with your new colleague. He says, "That guy is so boring." Once at the party, who do you find yourself stuck talking to but that new colleague? Because of your friend's comment, not even your own perception, you find yourself not really listening carefully or looking fully at him. More likely, you're thinking about the next 15 emails you need to send, or fretting as you gaze about the room and see so many people you'd rather be talking to. But if you drop the haze that your friend's comment has induced, perhaps you'll discover for yourself, from your own direct experience, what you think of your new colleague. You can listen, observe, be open-minded and interested. By the end of the evening, you might decide that you concur and find him really boring. But perhaps not. Life provides many surprises when we pay attention. What's important is that we are not merely guided by what we've been told, by the beliefs of others, by dogma or prejudice or assumption, but that we shape our impressions by as clear and open a perception as possible. Mindfulness is a relational quality, in that it does not depend on what is happening, but is about how we are relating to what is happening. That's why we say that mindfulness can go anywhere. We can be mindful of joy and sorrow, pleasure and pain, beautiful music and a screech. Mindfulness doesn't mean these all flatten out and become one big blob without distinction or intensity or flavor or texture. Rather, it means that old, habitual ways of relating, perhaps holding on fiercely to pleasure, so that ironically we're actually enjoying it less, or resenting and pushing away pain, so that sadly we suffer a lot more, or not fully experiencing times that seem unexciting, because we're oblivious to or take for granted the ordinary and the everyday. All these self-defeating, limiting reactions don't have to dominate. We can easily misunderstand mindfulness and think of it as somewhat passive, complacent, even a little bit dull. I was teaching somewhere recently and began the formal meditation instruction, as I often do, with the suggestion to simply sit in a relaxed way and listen to the sounds in the room. Someone raised his hand right away and asked, if I hear the sound of the smoke alarm, should I just sit here mindfully, knowing I'm hearing the smoke alarm go off? Or should I get up and leave? I responded, if there's a fire, I'd mindfully get up and leave. I understood his question, though. When we hear phrases commonly used to describe mindfulness, like just be with what is, accept the present moment, don't get lost in judgment, it can sound pretty inert. But the actual experience of mindfulness produces a vibrant, alive, open space where creative responses to situations have room to arise, precisely because we're not stuck in the well-worn, narrow grooves of our habitual reactions. In mindfulness, we don't lose discernment and intelligence. These qualities actually become more acute as stale preconceptions and automatic, rigid responses no longer continue to rule the day. Stealth meditation. As you sit down at your desk or workspace, spend a few moments just listening to the sounds around you and note your reactions to them. The beauty of mental space. Meditation trains the mind the way physical exercise strengthens the body. Recognizing the benefits of teaching mindfulness and emotional intelligence in the workplace, major corporations are integrating these trainings into programs being offered to employees. They see that a centered employee creates a happier, more profitable workplace, just as a spacious, healthful working environment aids the well-being of their employees. Aware of the symbiosis, large corporations from General Mills to DuPont are investing significant time and effort in creative, cost-effective ways to ease stress so that they can recruit and retain the most valuable talent. These giant companies are leading the way in the business world toward embracing mindfulness and wellness as part of a work culture. Every building on the General Mills campus is equipped with a meditation room, stocked with yoga mats and meditation cushions. Compassion to ourselves, to everyone around us, our colleagues, customers. That's what the training of mindfulness is really about, says Janice Martorano, the executive who spearheaded mindfulness practice at General Mills and who now directs the Institute for Mindful Leadership. It's about training our minds to be more focused, to see with clarity, to have spaciousness for creativity, and to feel connected, helping employees to live a healthier, more productive, and peaceful life, making them less stressed workers and better leaders. Meditation is proven to reduce the stress hormone cortisol, and everyone wants to lower their stress levels, as Mirabai Bush, co-founder of the Center for Contemplative Mind in Society, likes to say. It doesn't matter if it's a chemical company or a communications company, happy employees are more motivated and more loyal, and that makes for a better workplace. To demonstrate the efficacy of mindfulness on employee happiness, Richard Davidson teamed up with the CEO of a high-pressure biotech startup and John Kabat-Zinn of the Center for Mindfulness for an experiment. Their simple objective was to teach a group of employees how to focus completely on whatever's happening in the present moment without reacting to it. The results were striking. After 30 minutes of meditation a day for 8 weeks, employees in the meditation group, in contrast to the control group, demonstrated a significant shift in activation of areas of the brain associated with positive feelings. Also, employees tended to remember what they loved about their work in the first place and had an increased ability to get in touch with that momentum again. Chade-Meng Tan, one of the principal designers of Google's Search Inside Yourself curriculum, has seen similar effects on his company's 7-week mindfulness program. For a long time, practitioners knew, but the science wasn't there. Meng, as he is known, says, now the science has caught up. Some of us are affected by the environment we create. A museum's communications director named Gabriel described how he'd made his office a refuge. Creating a calm environment is critical, Gabriel says, and my colleagues really respond to it. My office is known as the place of calm and peace. I can close the door and meditate, sometimes before a meeting. Sometimes other people come and sit in my office when they need to chill out. It turns into a therapy room. People come in there to cry or to tell me what's going on. It makes me happy to provide this one spot that has a different energy, for myself as well as for colleagues. Emotional intelligence. When psychologist Dan Goleman popularized the notion of emotional intelligence, EI, 20 years ago, he helped redefine what smart means in our culture by moving from the old, exclusively IQ-based model to one inclusive of emotional life. We now understand that emotional and social intelligence can be just as important as IQ in determining well-being and success in the workplace. Emotions are contagious biologically, and our ability to modulate mood and demeanor contribute to health or toxicity at work. Emotional intelligence is divided into 5 primary aptitudes that can help us enormously at work. First is self-awareness, the knowledge of our own internal states, preferences, resources, and intuitions. Before we can relate to others mindfully, we must be conscious of what makes us tick. Next is self-regulation, which points to management of one's internal states, impulses, and resources. Additionally, there's motivation, learning how to gauge the emotional tendencies that habitually guide us toward our goals. This includes asking if we're doing things for the right reasons, for example, or overcompensating for insecurity. Another gift of emotional intelligence is empathy, awareness of other people's feelings, needs, and concerns. Finally, we cultivate social skills and the ability to cooperate and induce desirable responses in others. Mary Nasser, who works as a divorce lawyer and mediator, has seen emotional intelligence transform her experience of being with clients in highly stressful conditions. Divorce cases are often extremely challenging because of the toxic emotions involved, Mary says. In a 2 or 3 hour mediation session, feelings of rage, contempt, and distrust surface, and it's sometimes difficult to get the parties to stop verbally attacking each other long enough to have a productive discussion. However, since I've been practicing meditation, it's gotten easier for me to understand that the bad behavior that I'm witnessing comes out of the extreme pain that has brought the couples to this place. It's easier for me to feel empathy toward them and to sit calmly and listen to their stories, which then enables me to respond with kindness instead of reacting with impatience or anger. Recently, after a particularly difficult mediation session on a complicated case, with both the clients and their attorneys present, the husband told me that he felt that I was the first person who would actually listen to him in his 2-year-long contested divorce. And his feeling of being heard allowed him to be open enough to move toward a resolution of the case that had been elusive until that moment. My meditation practice has increased my ability to bring some lightness and optimism to the painful and destructive process of divorce. I can show my clients that it's within their power to stop looking back at what has happened in the past so that they can increase their capacity to move forward into a happier future. Meditation leads to emotional balance, which in turn leads to equanimity. Author-editor Melissa Kirsch has discovered that simple practice has profound results. I will sometimes sit in a brainstorm meeting, exhausted and listless, and look around the room and silently offer loving kindness to each person at the table, thinking, "May you be happy." She goes on to say, "I found space for breathing in the busiest settings, in departure lounges, at my desk, and on the subway. 10 mindful breaths and I'm back in the moment again." A meditator I know, Iris Brilliant, finds that optimizing the 30-minute break from her barista job can alter the rest of her day. When I first got this job, I would use my breaks to check Facebook, Iris tells me. Then I noticed that it didn't help me rest. It just made me more agitated and kind of distracted. Now I love to go outside in the sun if it's a nice day. This brings me into the present moment in a pleasant way. It helps me when dealing with intense, demanding customers. When I'm talking to people I perceive to be difficult, I take a moment to breathe and relax my body. It reminds me that there is no need to rush, and I can actually be present with the person. This makes the interaction go more smoothly. The strategies apply to corporate leaders as well. Casey Sheehan, the CEO of Patagonia, is adamant about doing 45 minutes of yoga and meditation every morning. My practice begins with measured breathing and a focus on all the conflicts and frustrations that are bothering me, he says. Instead of ignoring them, I really look at them. If I'm feeling stupid, angry, jealous, or humiliated, I bring total awareness and acknowledgement to those feelings. I admit my failures and own them. Then I usually start laughing as I realize how small and inconsequential I really am, and also how ridiculous my problems are. When we bring deep awareness to whatever's bothering us, the same things might be happening, but we are able to relate to them differently. This is reinforced by Carl, a hedge fund manager. Most of the immediate benefit I get during meditation is at work, as it's a very stressful, high-pressure environment with aggressive, frustrating personalities, myself included some of the time. During the last month, I was in the middle of ongoing, exasperating debates with my boss, and it was easy for my blood to boil. I was dealing with it during the day, and at night I was stewing over it. My meditation helped a great deal. After meditation, my anger would melt into acceptance and a much more balanced and proportional reaction. What was a major issue earlier was suddenly something I had a totally different perspective on after meditating for 30 to 60 minutes. If I meditated before going to sleep, the quality of sleep was much better, and I experienced much less internal volatility the next day. It was a night and day change. It would only take a little bit of meditation to transform how I felt about a work conversation. The more I do it, the more it reinforces how the mind just spins stories. I can flip out at a conversation or smile and laugh off the exact same interaction. It just depends on whether I'm paying attention to my breath and what my thoughts are doing. That was the other thing. On the days when my threshold for losing my composure was low, my body was tense and my breath was noticeably constricted. On days I meditated, my breath felt more open and relaxed, and so was my reaction. Stealth meditation. Try to perform a simple, conscious act of kindness every day. It can be as simple as holding an elevator door, saying thank you in a sincere manner, or listening to someone with a clear and focused mind.